I love to demo some of you what we are doing with it. Are you ready for that?
Yeah, I'd love to see it.
Like,
Let's talk
because we
about it.
taking it a little bit maybe too far for some, but like I want to share like why we did this and how we did. There's your video pops onto my next screen. There we go. And so I want to take you a little bit through. Now what I want to describe to you is where it applies. And so in our world, this applies to remote selling. Now, as you probably yourself are, most of the pipeline is currently blown up under the current circumstances. Leads are a problem, winning deals are a problem, and churn is a problem. And so what we have looked at is a technique called remote selling. Now, the point that I'm focusing on is the word remote here. Now, what I want to describe to you and where it fits in is if I apply this to what you see down here is a form of developing a sale. So I prepare a little bit up front. I then have some social interaction. For example, I can engage with you on LinkedIn. I may call you, leave a voicemail. I may email you. I then have a conversation with you if I get in touch with you. I do a demo of what we were talking about and so on and so forth. And we go from the left to the right. Makes sense, right?
Hmm.
Now, bottom to the top means how deeper engaged I am. So higher I go, the deeper of meaningful engagement I have. Now, meaningful could be because you're more interested in the buyer, because I'm learning more from you, and so on and so forth. And so what I'm going to apply and say is like, this is the road. Now, there's two different paths. Do you see those two different paths that we can take?
Yep.
Okay, that is provocative and consultative. Consultative means that if I say, like if you were talking to a customer, that you would be able to diagnose why they want a tool like Crystal. Provocative is when you're telling them why they should and why, and provoking is way more applicable to innovative solutions because your buyer doesn't understand that yet. They have nothing to compare against. So innovative solutions are often provoked. Well-known solutions are often consulted, and mass market solutions, you use a technique called solution selling. It's price and features, lowest price, best feature set wins. Make sense?
Yeah.
Now, anything that stands out here, anything that you think that doesn't, like when you look at it, you go like, I wonder that or this.
I imagine the first part of this funnel that can be very nonlinear, right? And just going between calls and emails and maybe multiple steps before you can actually get to that initial conversation, right?
That's right. Now, that serial nature, right? One task comes before the other. There's two things that you see. You may rotate through this a couple of times, one, or you may not do them in this sequence, sequentially. And so what you're going to find more and more, all of us want non-sequential things. Sequential means, hey, I do a discovery call with you, then you give me a demo, then I provide you a price, and then we go into some form of discussion, negotiation, whatever it is. It's in the right sequence. Today, you see the sequences are being messed up. So some people may say, like, before I take a look at it, what is the price? Before I
Yep.
get a demo, is this really what it needs? So they're going to start mixing up. And that is just human behavior. We live in a world that we do not want to be, like led like a horse from one point to another. We go like, allow me to control my own journey and how I want to take it.
Hmm. What's your recommendation in situations like that, where if the buyer say wants to move pricing way up in the order of discussion?
So ask me a question about pricing as it relates to winning by design. Let's role play this.
Okay. All right. So before we get into any workshop, how much is it going to cost to get my sales team, whereas we're ramping up from, over the next year to like 4 or 5 people? What's it going to cost per employee?
Yeah, now what you can do is when you do an open class, it costs about $1,500 per person, so that would be about $6,000. If it's a dedicated, committed workshop, in generally it sits somewhere between $25,000 and $50,000. Customers similar like you end up spending right that amount. Now what you'll see what I do is I give you a range.
Mm-hmm.
25 and 50. So now we brought up pricing straight up front. This allows you to go on with the conversation or not, or you can say, hey, I'm really interested in those open classes at $1,500 a person. What do I get for that? And both are good answers. But essentially, I move pricing straight up and make that one of the parts of the conversation. I trust totally that if you want to move up from an individual open class to a more customized class, that will follow somewhere down the line. I don't feel I have to feed you and tell you exactly what the difference is and the value that needs to be created. I feel like we're beyond that in life.
Mm-hmm. Right. Okay.
And so that's what you see how you do. Now, what I'm going to do in that, I'm going to say is like, I'm going to simplify all this and indicate that there's actually only 5 things that we really do in sales. We have a meeting, we send emails, there might be some chat, there's some social engagement on LinkedIn or on Twitter or on Instagram, wherever people would like to do that, and there's a phone call. Now, which one of these ones do you desire the least? Which one of these ones could you live without right now?
Which ones could I live without?
Yeah, which ones do you, if you, like of these 5, which ones has the least meaning to you when you are buying or selling?
Right now, we don't really use chats too much, so that has very little meaning. I personally prefer phone calls far more than meetings, so that's just me, though, personal preference. Email is the most important of them.
Yeah, and so what you'll see is that phone calls is actually the most meaningful in many cases. Mm-hmm. Meetings has a form in there, but what all these have in common is that they either are synchronous or asynchronous. So we are right now having a synchronous meeting. You say something, I can respond to that, synchronous. Now, email is asynchronous because when I email it, it will take a certain amount of time and then you respond to me a day later. So it takes more time. So that's asynchronous. We cannot just interact, instantly. And that is the difference in that. What you'll see is that today, many people would feel that the moment in time we move from synchronous chatting back and forth and we move to asynchronous, we're slowing things down. Like this morning, I had a lively chat with a prospective client who was on LinkedIn with me. I introduced Andy, we're all chatting, and then eventually the message comes, let's move this to email. And we know once it moves to email, it's going to go to a significantly slower speed, although the content may be richer and so on. And that's synchronous and asynchronous. Does that make sense?
Right, yeah.
Now, what we're also going to see is that currently, all these 4 are done remotely per definition in general. Like you're not going to sit next to each other in a meeting, let me email you. Although chatting in an email with the colleague next to you can always be fun. But obviously that is like chitter chatter. But what you'll see is that most of these are already done remote. Meetings never were 100% remote. And today we live in a world that all of them are done remote.
Right.
This sets the stage. Are you ready? I'm going to show you the picture before and after.
Oh, thing of beauty. Look at that.
Look at that. Okay.